Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Loading Time Only. I'm your host, Spencer, and I'm joined by my co-host, a man who everything he touches on his desk makes a loud sound right now, Danny Gatto.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, don't fidget this episode, buddy.
No fidgeting allowed.
Yeah. Sorry about Danny's audio quality. He sucks with computers, and despite my best efforts, I couldn't help fix that.
It's a long-running issue, for sure.
Yeah, basically like your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. Well, this week we are going to go really deep into our preparation for the Rivals of Ixalan RPTQ. Danny's chasing silver again. I'm chasing going back to a Pro Tour. And, we're both chasing happiness, which only winning an RPTQ can really bring you. So, that being said, if you want immediate happiness, you can check out our sponsors. You can check out the Mana Base. You can check them out, and their sponsor, Fusion Gaming. You can get amazing content over at the Mana Base, whether it's Nikachu, whether it's some of the new and upcoming content creators. They really like to support those type of creators. Check them out at the Mana Base. You can also check out our other sponsor at playatgamegrid.com. If you go to playgamegrid.com, you can see if there's a game grid near you. Check out their amazing tournament scene and the things that they are doing. That's playatgamegrid.com. Let's go right into the show. Before we get too far in, I do want to mention our Patreon. You go to patreon.com/LDOMTG and support the show directly. The show's always going to be free, but if you ever feel like you're getting something out of it, just go check out Patreon, patreon.com/LTOMTG. I did change it to a monthly subscription rather than a per episode cost, so it's really easy. Whatever you put in, it'll charge you at the first day of the month, and every dollar is really appreciated. So patreon.com/LTOMTG is where you can go to support this show. Let's go to our biggest movers. Our biggest movers is something we do every week. We want to talk about the cards that are going up, that are going down, and kind of where we think they lie in the format. And Danny, I'd like to start with my biggest mover down because I don't know what happened.
We did talk about this one earlier.
Yeah, there was a time in this format where I felt like we thought this card was really good, and I don't even know that I play this at all in my blue decks anymore.
Yeah, I mean.
So let's call it out. It's Sea Legs. What happened?
Yeah, it's weird.
Because there are obviously games where I sideboard it in if I have one, where I'm like, this card's insane. This is one of the best cards on my 75. But I really don't main deck it anymore.
Yeah, I don't like playing cards where if I get my 1-for-1, I'm ecstatic. This one, I feel like I'm really doing it if I put it on a 2 and my 2/2 beats there. It's 2/2. Which isn't where I want to be.
It is a card that, at the beginning of the format, when the format seemed really fast, I really liked it. As the format slowed down, I was like, it's still good. And then when every single deck that I had was... I play a lot of blue decks. And I can just get better interaction in my red-blue Pirates deck than Sea Legs. And then in my 4-color blue decks, there's not even a reason to play Sea Legs. I can just literally play any removal spell I want. So it's not that Sea Legs it's bad, it's just that the 2 blue archetypes that are the best, which is blue-red Pirates, and then multicolored blue, just don't care about Sea Legs.
Yeah, they just don't utilize it.
Yeah, it's not that it's bad. It's a good card. It doesn't fit.
Yeah, it's pretty low impact. Your deck is normally full with a curve that does something, and then high impact.
I think I called it Swords to Plowshares on the podcast.
You did. Yep.
It
has not lived up to the high praise that you've given
of Spencer Howland.
Yeah, Spencer Howland. Every once in a while you get 2 toughness and a removal spell, and then you're really doing it.
It is not the card that I was hoping. So what is your biggest mover down?
My biggest mover down is Everdawn Champion. This card's just weird. It's hard to cast, which is annoying. Right? Like, being double colored on turn 3 is not a given, even if you're pretty heavy on white. And then Ormhoods just sits there. And so it's kind of like a gleaming barrier that's hard to cast, and maybe you'll get a 1 with wind or something, and then it could be okay. But
I kind of agree with your cat here in that I really think that the problem with Everdon Champion is that on its surface, if you think you are in the same aggressive format of Ixalan, it makes a lot of sense that this card, you just put an enchantment on this, and how do they ever beat it, right? That is not the world we live in. That is, I mean, Impel, Bombard, any enchant, any of the many removal spells, Hunt the Weak, this card dies to everything. And, in another world, I put a Mark of the Vampire on this, and I'm like, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, that's a world that could occur. It just is pretty rare in this format. And then if you're not equipping it, you just have a 2/2 for 3, which you'd rather do something else.
So my biggest mover up is Colossal Dreadmaw. It's kind of weird. I think that people don't splash green enough. Blue-green as a base for your 4-color deck with New Horizons and stuff like that. I feel like people don't do that enough. And people think Colossal Dreadmaw goes in their green-red or green-white Dinos deck, and I actually think that it really does a good job in the blue decks as being that thing, right? We talked a lot about the 4-mana 3/3, the
Dust Charger.
Dust Charger, right? And Colossal Dreadmaw is just a better version of that. And it's not like you can't cast that in this deck. So I think that I don't think that people play Dinos in their blue decks enough. And Colossal Dreadmaw is one that, in both sealed and draft now, I've been pretty happy with in my blue decks.
That's a good, barrier of this is a big thing. And it's bigger than all the other things. Yeah, it's the biggest thing. And it's still pretty reasonably fast.
We live in a format of 2/2s and 3/3s. That hasn't changed. Well, the speed of the format has changed, right? And there's 1/4s, and there's the format's slower. It didn't change the size of the creatures. And what are they gonna do to your Dreadmaw?
Yeah, it can die, but hopefully you make them use their removals on other things and stuff. And it's just such a low pick. You don't have to spend a high pick getting a Colossal Dreadmaw, and it can win the game for you.
I really like your robot voice, but I really like your mover up as well. And one of the things that I really like about it, so your biggest mover up is Fanatical Firebrand. I actually just have red and blue 1-drops overall moving up for me.
I was initially not happy with Firebrand in my deck, just because I didn't think it did enough. But I think the D1 damage has come up enough that it's worth it.
It gets into damage by itself, and then after that, it makes it so you can attack with creatures that you wouldn't normally be able to attack with. And I think that, between this, Daring Buccaneer, and Mistcloak Herald, is that a card? Is that a thing that exists?
The one unblockable.
Wow, good job, me. I've played too much of this format if I know card names. I think that the red-blue deck just actively wants 1-drops. And even the red-black deck would love this card, even though that deck's bad. I think that we are in a world where the aggro decks are good, but the aggro decks have to be built a certain way to be able to compete. And if I want to be attacking with my creature, if I want to be attacking into Sailor Means, and Sailor Means is my opponent's first play, I want to be able to play something similar to any of the cards I just mentioned, right? So, Herald is unblockable. Firebrand lets you attack into a 1/4 more easily with your other creatures. And obviously Daring Buccaneer doesn't care because they just bounce off each other. But these cards are important because if your opponent has 3 1/4s in their deck for 3 mana, you have to get under them. And luckily, they provided us with 1-drops that can do that.
You have to chip away at the life total to make it easier for you to finish them off, for sure.
I just stole your up, so why don't you give your thoughts on your up also?
No, I mean, that's basically it. I thought that, like, it was just doing enough. There's a lot of X1s in the format that you can shoot off. And,
yeah.
Like, trading up is definitely my 3-power guy attacking into your 1/4 is a pretty common situation that comes up. And so this stops that from...
Or they just don't block, and then you just get to do it again next turn.
Yeah, no, like if they can't block with their 1/4 anymore, then you effectively killed their 1/4.
Yep. Should we just dive right in?
I think so, yeah. Like, both of us, I think we've been focusing pretty hard on prepping for the RPTQ, so I think going in and talking about it would be great.
Yeah, so I'm going to let you lead this. I'm going to have a lot to say because it's my training grounds, but you got to write it, so I will let you go. So every week on the show, we like to talk about something that's going to make you better at Magic Life in general. And this week, we wanted to do kind of similar to, like, from Constructive Criticism, you might hear, like, a Pro Tour special, right? Where it's like, here's how we prepped for this Pro Tour. Here's the deck that we're playing at the Pro Tour. Here it's like, Danny and I are both trying to get back to the Pro Tour.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk about what we've done and where we think we sit in the format.
Yep, so I think the one important thing to note is that we're both planning on playing it online, so we don't have to practice draft. Because if you top 8...
That's right, we get to practice draft.
Well, no, we don't.
I still draft.
Yeah, we only...
It's bad prep, but I do still draft.
Yeah. I mean, drafting's fun, but...
Well, let's actually talk about this for a second. So, there are things that you can do in draft that don't match up with sealed, right? So, like, the fact that I don't have the draft to qualify this for this Pro Tour, you might ask Spencer, why you even drafted? And it's like, because playing 15 games with 3 sealed decks, as much as I love sealed, like, sometimes I just, like...
I mean, mixing it up is valuable.
Yeah, I just need to mix it up for just a second. Like, I have played more sealeds than I have drafts, but I still just need a break.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's... So if you were going to a paper one, how much effort would you put on draft versus sealed?
So, this is just my opinion about limited RPTQs in general. Getting the 1 seed is actually really important. Okay. So the reason for that is because in most of these situations, if you can be on a play and just force an aggressive deck, because you only have to win 1 match, that's like really powerful. So that's the strategy that I recommended to Michael that qualified him for a Pro Tour, and that's the one that I would pick anyway. So I would just want to understand the archetypes in draft, and I think once you understand the archetypes, it gives you a big enough edge in the RPTQ. So I would actually still practice more sealed than draft, even if I had a draft in the top 8, because I'm only drafting a deck and playing 1 match.
Mm-hmm.
And in that draft, depending on my seed, I would probably force an aggressive deck if I was on the play.
Mm-hmm. I think in one of our RPTQ later, maybe it wasn't RPTQ, but I knew I was on the draw. And I played a bunch of walls and one-drops and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely can't like that. But I think even if you're going to a paper one, I think prepping for sealed is more important, just because you just have to get yourself to the top 8 before you can.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that people overvalue and undervalue. So here's the thing: people overvalue the fact that they top 8'd, but people undervalue the fact that all you need to do is get to the top 8 to give yourself a chance.
Yep.
And the thing here is, what is important to you is the difference here. If top 8ing is what's important to you, cool. If qualifying for the Pro Tour is what's important to you, you want to give yourself as many chances for that as possible. And the way that you do that is by giving yourself the best chance to top 8 in RPTQ.
Yeah.
A good example of this is I lost to... I played a RPTQ where the only 2 people I lost to were Michael and one of the what are the three brothers, the young kids?
Keepers.
The Keepers. I lost one of the Keeper kids, which was so funny because his deck was insane. I actually don't know how he lost a match, but both of their decks were completely busted. And after the tournament, Michael qualifies, and he says, "Do you have any regrets?" I'm like, "No, man. Like, the two people I lost to were great Magic players that I gave myself a really good chance the way I built this deck, the way that I played. I lost to two great players with really, really good seal pools." And I think that when you go into something like an RPTQ where the only real prize that matters is that Pro Tour qualification, the expectation that you need to hold yourself to in a limited RPTQ is, did I build my seal pool correctly? Did I play well? Did I miss something? Right? Like, those are the things that you need to think about. Did I sideboard correctly? I think sideboarding's huge in these. But I think that you're right in that sealed prep is what gives you the edge.
I think a lot of people won't put in the time of sealed prep just because they don't enjoy it. You can get a big leg up. So one thing that I like to do for sealed is kind of try to make it so I'm not surprised or confused when I open up my pool. So I always try to talk to people about rares that are weird or build around, if that makes sense. So there's a few that I thought would be interesting to talk about. So what's your opinion on Watley? The one.
I mean, it has infinity loyalty, right? So, if I open one and I'm green-white, I'm going to play it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's you splash it, or... So, it's been weird to me. So I think sometimes it performs really well, but then the situations that it's bad, it doesn't do anything. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
It does. So, if we're talking specifically about this card, for those who don't know,
sure.
It's the 4-mana green-white 2. It comes into play with 3 loyalty. You can +1 it to put a loyalty for each creature you control. You can -1 to give a creature -X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And then you can get an emblem for her -8 whenever a creature you controls dies or enters the battlefield.
Enters the battlefield.
Yeah, you draw a card. So this card is really good in sealed. And
I think it is better in sealed than draft for sure.
Yeah,
I could definitely see it being much better.
The boards get stalled a lot, and in a stalled board, every single one of her abilities is quite insane. I would consider splashing part of her, not all of her.
Yeah, no, not double splashes.
But I think that her minus breaks board stalls, her ultimate obviously busts the board stalls right open, and her plus is basically insane because it forces you from into a board stall to they have to attack her.
Yeah,
which gives you the advantages the blocker.
So there's certain cards that I think go really well with her, the Suncrested Pterodon is perfect, right? It's a flyer that you can pump up, and it kind of despises board stalls. It's such a big toughness. But I definitely think that's the type of card that gets much better in sealed because you're more likely to play that type of game.
Let's talk about the one that you have on this list that I actually think that you're 100% incorrect for trying to build around.
Okay, which one? That Path of Metal?
Yeah, I think it's actually... I think if you tried to build around this card, you built your sealed deck wrong.
Yeah, I think it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Is there a scenario where you would be able to play it? Or not really?
If I have a literal insane sealed pool that builds around it, but playing a bunch of... I've played against the 2/2 Vigilant guy. I've played against a deck that went 2/2 Vigilance guy, 2/2 Vigilance guy, 2/2 Vigilance guy, Path of Metal Concede. And I was like... Okay.
That's their dream draw. So, okay. I agree. I mean, the backside is worth it. And so these are the type of decks that when my seal pool is underpowered, I will often find myself trying to make it work, which is probably not correct, but the better my seal deck is, the less risky I get with players.
My problem with Path Path to Metal specifically is its build-around cost is so high. So, like, if you have a bad seal pool, you actually likely don't have a Path of Metal deck that's good.
Yeah, you just can't have that many vigilances.
And if you have a really good seal pool, doesn't matter if Path of Metal is in your seal pool.
Yeah, that specific
Probably
card is
not.
definitely strange. Yeah, so it's like, yeah.
The next card has gotten a lot of controversy.
Yeah, I don't like. So, Alinda the Duskrows is 2 white-black for a 1/1 lifelink legendary vampire. Whenever a creature dies, put a counter on it. And when it dies, you get X 1/1 vampires.
Yeah.
Where X is its
power. Can I just ask, have you ever lost to this card?
No. I've always killed it.
I have literally never lost to this card. And I've probably played against it like close to 11 times.
I can imagine a scenario where it's good.
Sure. Are we on the side of like... Let's start with this. This isn't your seal pool. You are in black-white. Do you play this?
The way that I normally play sealed is I would play this because I'm definitely like an upside person. Like I like playing cards that could suck, but could be very good because I can maneuver the game into a way that I can use it well.
Okay, so you would play this?
If I was in black-white, I'd probably.
I don't know, which is so weird. Like, I think that I would, but I can see myself being upset and sideboarding it out.
This is also the type of card that, like, I was drafting with people, and we were in black-white vampires, and the option was this, or, like, an impale. I'm like, oh, sick. Oh, why not? And they, like, slammed. I was like, wait, what? What are you doing?
I would take impale.
Yeah, obviously. It's, like, way better.
So, Azor's Gateway is the next one you have on this list.
That card is strange. Have you played with it much at all?
No, I haven't played with it, but I actually think this card is playable.
I think it's quite good. It's rummaging Goblin, but better.
So the Gateway is 2 mana. It's a legendary artifact that you can pay 1 and tap it. Draw a card, then exile card from your hand. If you have 5 or more cards with different converted mana costs exiled with this, you may gain 5 life and you untap it and you flip it, and then you can pay X where X. You can tap it for X of any one color where X is your life total. So, I like this card in sealed a lot, but I don't know that I would try and flip it.
Yeah, no, I think it's just Rummaging Goblin, but might have upside.
Yeah.
It's like Rummaging Goblin that they can't kill, but they can't chump block.
Yeah, the whole problem with Rummaging Goblin is it costs 3, so it's in an important spot in your curve, and it is really vulnerable, whereas this doesn't have those problems. So in this sealed format, I actually have lost to this card, where they were like, this is great, like...
So Rummaging Goblin it's like the same card, but more easily interactable. So if Rummaging Goblin sucks, then this card will probably also suck. But if Rummaging Goblin's really good, which there's games where it's really good and your opponent has to kill it, then this is they won't be able to kill it, and you'll be able to use it and not have it vulnerable. Yeah.
So for those who don't understand Danny's robot voice on this episode, so sorry for the audio issues. What he's saying is, like, there is a percentage of the time where Rummaging Goblin is really great, and the times where he's not really great, this card negates by being an artifact.
Yeah. Like, when it's good, I don't want to be able to impale my Rummaging Goblin.
Right. Yeah. Alright, let's talk about the last card you have on this list, which is Golden Guardian, which, in my opinion, is the most overrated card in this set.
It's a weird one, right?
Weird. I mean, it's a good card.
I think it's good. Do you think you play it in all sealed decks?
know.
I mean, it's colorless, right? So
there's 0% chance I'm ever playing this in basically any of the blue-red decks that I play in sealed.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't play this in black-red. I would play it in all of my green decks. I would play it in most of my black decks that aren't black-red. When I say it's overrated, that doesn't mean that I think it's bad, by the way. I think this card is great. I'm saying the number of opponents that I've had cast this card where I'm like, there's no way you can flip this in your deck.
They have to, like, kill 2 of their other creatures and flip this one into a land in order to...
Like, it seems so bad in some of these decks that people played in. But it's a good card. Like, it's a card that, like, when I'm organizing my seal pool, I'm like, oh, I have a Golden Guardian. Let's put this over here and see what we...
It pairs very nicely with certain cards, like...
Yeah.
Colossal Dreadmore.
It's almost 3 turns of setup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of setup, but it's like a guaranteed win condition, which is really nice.
Yeah. I mean, 4 mana for 4 force every turn is like...
Yeah, you win.
Yeah, you're going to win the game. The problem is like, you're taking multiple turns off to get to that win condition. Mm-hmm. So, in a deck like blue-red or black-red, it's like, I don't have time for this. This is...
Yeah. I do think that this is the type of card that you can slant your deck towards.
Yeah.
Just, like...
If I have this rare, and I have, like, a mediocre green... Let's say it's, like, a mediocre green-black... This actually might be a card that gets me into green-black, actually. Mm-hmm. Where, like... I'm not really happy playing green-black otherwise, but, like, Golden Guardian is like, oh, okay, this actually is really good in green-black. It's probably really good in blue-black. It's, like, really good in green-red. It's really good in, green-white. Like, it's just very specific decks it's not good in, and it might swing me from playing, like, a mediocre blue-red deck to playing a mediocre green-white deck.
Mm-hmm. It also is just, like, really good. Like, it's a tough card to play with and against. A lot of times, like, it gives you the opportunity to make really bad attacks. Like, if they attack into you, and you get to kill your Golden Guardian, and you get really punished, like, that's a big way for them to lose.
So then, what is the next thing you have on this list?
So that was all the, like, specific cards that I want to talk about. I just thought, this is, like, a common practice that I do before tournaments like this, is I just want to, like, talk about some cards that I find interesting, or I don't know what my opinion is fully with friends, just to, like, hash out those ideas so that when I sit down and I open a Golden Guardian, I, like, understand when I'm doing better when I only have 30 minutes to build my deck.
Yeah.
But so one of my main beliefs is that I want to make sure that when I'm building my sealed deck, I have, like, a path to victory. Mm-hmm. And so these are the types of cards that I will adjust how highly I rate them based on how good my other cards are. Do you tend to do that, or is that just, like, a weird thing?
No, I think that, like, the Planeswalker, is it Hawatli? Yeah, I think she's a good example of, like, I have a Hawatli in my pool. If I can play Hawatli, because in sealed specifically, like, I am more likely to do that than not. One thing that I like to try and steer away from, so Danny is a butt of a lot of jokes among our friends. Whether it's the fact that he got 2 free wins with the vehicle sealed pool.
The masterpiece.
It's actually one of the worst sealed decks I've ever seen.
At 17, it has to be good.
It has to be. The great... My opponent could literally wait 1 turn to play any creature to win the game, and I could literally make any other play to beat you in a game 3 deck. Your I like that your X4 deck went X2, and you're like, great deck!
Good job, team.
Good job, team.
Deck building.
That deck was so bad. But it does speak to what Danny's saying, which is like, my deck's terrible. How can I make a less terrible version of this deck? Mm-hmm. And I think that there are cards that lead you to interesting decisions. Golden Guardian's one of them, right? I think that Path of Nettle is not one of them. Like,
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think it is. But Huali might be, right? Like, I might play Naya instead of red-white for Huali. I might play Bant instead of blue-white for Huali.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of knowing, like, is this card powerful enough to impact those decisions? And does it line up with what the format's telling me to do?
Yeah, I think it's easy to see with rares, but I often do the same thing with, like, commons, too. Like, Vampire Revenant's a good example of, like, a bad card, so the format is one flyer.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself putting it in decks that just need a flyer. Like, a black-white removal that just needs a bunch of 2/2s that can move wall. I'm like, I need something to kill someone. And, like, I'll put that over a better card.
Let's move on to our next point. We have what type of decks are good. So what you have here is if you want a slow deck, it needs to be impressive. A mediocre slow deck will not cut it in this sealed format because you will lose to less interactable bonds. I want to talk about this idea for a second. So the other worst deck I've ever seen Danny do well with at a GP was a 3-color aggro deck.
That deck is great.
Like, it was horrible.
No rares, like, no fixing. Just put 2 planes in my deck. Yeah.
No, but what I want to say about this is, like, we looked at the seal pool and, like, everybody else was like, I would build black-white. Like, and then he was like, I don't think this black-white deck beats the good sealed decks in this format. So I'm not going to play it. And I don't know whether or not Danny's decision was right? Like,
mm-hmm. It's just like 9 rounds is like the sample size, right?
It's too hard to say. But what I can say is that Danny's thought process was right. Even if Danny's decision to play like this horrible sealed deck.
Hi, Jack. You're on the team.
Dude, it was funny. We're at the GP. We were at this last GP, and that sealed deck was brought up. And, like, somebody was arguing, like, it was me, Michael, and somebody else, and we were arguing about the contents of it. And I was like, it's in my vlog. Let me pull up my vlog.
It was horrible.
I was like, he was playing this fight card with 3 X3s in his deck.
Yeah, I had, like,
and 1 Colossal Dreadmaw.
Yeah.
It was a terrible deck. But what Danny's idea is I'm going to play my best 2-drops, this Territorial Hammer Skull, and that's it. Like, that's the deck I'm going to play.
Mm.
And if you don't think that any of your slow decks can beat any of the reasonable slow decks, then, yeah, knock yourself out. Danny's thought process is correct. Whether or not his decision was correct at this GP, the idea that you get to evaluate your seal pool according to what could reasonably happen, this is one of people's biggest weaknesses in sealed. They're like, I'm so unlucky because I didn't open the nuts. Now how can I ever win this GP? And it's like, That's not how a GP works. There are so many players on day one. Such a large percentage of them will misbuild their deck. Such a large percentage of them have never played sealed. Such a large percentage of them, are going to keep bad hands. You are at the advantage by thinking about sealed holistically versus everyone else who doesn't.
Mm. So many people are victimized in sealed, and like that's not.
And it is the format where you can gain the biggest edge. Like, if you talk to anyone who is a hardcore competitive player, that plays limited, they're like, I think that sealed is both yours and my favorite format at this point.
I find it very fun. I think it's very, like, the puzzle of sealed is really enjoyable.
And it's a puzzle. That's the thing is, like, people like the puzzle of different things, right? Like, figuring out how to play this interaction and construct and things like that. The puzzle of sealed is, I have perfect information of how I get to build this deck. What's the best way to do it? And thinking of sealed in that way leads you to this point. What types of decks are good? And, like, you have Buccaneers Bravado in this list. I play a lot of Buccaneers Bravado decks.
I think it's great.
Talk about it.
So Buccaneers Marauder is the type of card that I very much like having in my deck because it's a win condition at a pretty low cost. I can trade it off easy as a combat trick if I need to, but at the same time, if I get one more creature than they have, and then I attack, and I can Buccaneers Bravado to deal 8 damage or something, then they're dead.
Yeah, I think that, like, in this sealed format, I'm looking at a few things. Do I have an aggressive deck? Do I have a multicolor deck? Do I have bombs that draw me in?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah, I think when I started this format, I often built like some white-black deck that maybe had a Ravenous Chupacabra and like a good curve of creatures, and then I would play against a Tetzmoc and just be dead. It's like,
knock on wood, I've never lost a Tetzmoc in this format.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm due for this RPTQ.
No,
I won 2 Tetzmoc mirrors in the last online sealed PTQ I played in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
The second Tetzmoc's pretty good.
Oh my gosh. Danny, was the sealed PTQ online today? Oh, no, it's on the 31st.
I have no idea.
I just thought I missed a PTQ that I was supposed to play. I just had a panic attack. I'm like, shoot!
I think
where were we? No, I think that, like, how do you end up in green-red? It's like, I had 2 Colossal Dreadmaws, 2 of the 2/4 that ramps me, and, like, good removal and good creatures. How did you end up in blue-white? I could get Ascend really easily. I had some good flyers and some good ground creatures, and blue and white have the best removal spells in the format in the form of Water Knot and Luminous Bonds. Mm-hmm. How did you end up in black-white? I opened the Nut Vampire deck, or I opened the Nut Removal deck, and I have a Tetzmoc. How did you end up in blue-red? I'm lucky, and I got to play my favorite deck in the format. How'd you end up in black-red? I'm unlucky, but my deck is pretty solid. I got a bunch of really good cards from Ixalan specifically, rather than Rivals, and that's how I ended up in black-red. How did you end up in green-white? I think that the truth is that when you look at the format and break it down into archetypes and colors, there are ways you can end up in most decks.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, compared to Ixalan, you don't get Ixalan in this format. Like, you don't open... one of the huge problems in Ixalan Sealed is I have 30 playable black and white cards, but they go into 2 different decks, so I actually only have 15 cards for each deck. That does not happen in this format.
It does not. No.
Like, I can open an Anointed Deacon, which sucks, and is, if I don't have vampires, is bad, but I only have 1 pack of Anointed Deacons. And the thing is with, like, the Dino Love cards, for example, comparatively, it's like Sun-Crested Pterodon is just good, so it doesn't matter. The 3/3 for 4 that you need another dino, you don't need that many dinos to make it playable. It just overall is a format that doesn't get punished the way Ixalan did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the train wreck decks are definitely lower in this one. Like, most decks function relatively well.
Most seal pools have a playable deck in them in this format.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at a GP level. Now, we're obviously talking about our preparation for the RPTQ. You only have 1 loss to give it an RPTQ, realistically.
Yeah, you have to go 5-1, usually.
So your deck does need to be better than it needs to be at a GP. But I think that an RPTQ player on average is going to be worse than a GP player. So it kind of evens out.
Yeah, I think it's just a smaller sample size, which is frustrating a lot of time. But I think this format does seem like it's going to be good, where you have options. Like, there are a lot of really powerful cards that you need to watch out for, but you'll likely be able to come up with a good deck that can interact with those. And then I think sideboarding is very big in this format. For that reason, is like the way that the bombs play out is very different, and you can sideboard pretty effectively against what your opponent's trying to do.
Yeah, I had a sealed pool that I was with one of my Patreons at Constructive Criticism, where we were playing Esper, and we had a Crushing Canopy on our board. And I, like, almost thought about bringing it in every game. And I I think that like understanding what cards are important in certain matchups. This sealed format has a defined metagame. It's like the top 2 decks are 4-color blue and blue-red. And then you have just under that is white-black. Doesn't matter if it's vampires or
good stuff.
Just good stuff. But I think it's just slightly below those two.
I think blue-red takes more. Like, I think there's a lot of bad blue-red decks, but they're still scary.
I think the blue-red is the only aggro deck that I'm like willing to bet on.
Yeah, it's not one that you just have more 2-drops that are actually good.
Yeah, like as much as red-black is a deck that I'll end up in, but like I'm not like I'm in red-black. But blue-red, it's like I can.
Oh yeah.
I can X1 with this.
For sure. One more thing, Curious Obsession.
Yeah,
there's like
Curious Obsession is so good. And then when you look at like the decks outside of those 3, it's not that they're bad, right? Like green red is completely reasonable, green white's completely reasonable.
Yeah, you can play dinosaurs to good effect.
I do think that there are good green black seal decks where there aren't good green black draft decks, so that's interesting.
Yeah, the green black seal deck is actually pretty common, where it's like black bombs, green shell, like green dudes.
Yeah. So I think that like understanding what types of decks are good is important. And the answer is typically like, if I'm in aggro deck, I actually kind of want to be blue for.
You have like Crashing Tides, so this is a great aggro card.
And which is weird. And then if I'm controlling, I want to be blue, and if I'm mid range, I want to be green. And I think that's just kind of where this format is, but it's a very fun format. So the last point that you have is getting ready to adjust. Why don't you talk about
that? So I think sideboarding is something that I've been trying to work on recently, and I think it's one of the areas that a lot of players could improve in the most. I'm not saying that you always need to be doing like huge sideboards, but there's so many times where like your opponent's deck does something very clear or has certain cards that matter, and you can make big mistakes like forgetting to bring in a Cleansing Ray, and that can cost you because you really needed that to kill their Profane position or their Luna spawns or something. And then it's like the type of card that's not quite good enough that you could easily skip over it and like have it in your unplayables pile. And I just think that like taking more active role in sideboarding and being willing to put in like the work in between rounds to know what you need to do.
Takes no time.
Yeah.
Like, I know that you're really excited because you won, or you're frustrated because you lost. But like, if I see a dual shot, I need to think about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your opponent goes like the 2/1 flyer and the 2/1 menace, and you're like, all right, dual shot.
Or if you are blue-red and like your opponent's playing red, like, dual shot is main deckable in this format, right? So like.
It is.
Like, you have to think about that kind of stuff. And, you know, the Crushing Canopy I just mentioned a second ago, it's like, if you're not main decking in, you should think about that Crushing Canopy in your board every single game.
Every single game. It's very...
And it doesn't matter what colors you are, to be honest with you. Like, if you are blue or green, or if you have Treasure Makers, you should be thinking,
this Crushing Canopy could be... It's like a catch-all card that targets things that matter so often in Sealed.
Crushing Canopy will go down as my favorite sideboard card of all time.
It's really interesting.
Because, like, it is... The fact that it's flyers and enchantments, rather than flyers, artifacts, and enchantments, is such an interesting tug and pull.
Yeah. Like, enchantments generally are very impactful when you play them, but they're more uncommon. Like, you don't play as many. And then flyers are really impactful in the field. Like, Crushing Canopy is just going to kill so many Suncrested Pterodons. Also, Splash, that card's great.
Let's wrap this up. And I want to wrap it up with, you open your shield pool tomorrow. What is your reasonable hope?
I hope I open... like, I want one of the two decks. Like, I'd either like an aggressive deck where I can play.
You either
like,
want blue red or 4-color blue.
Yeah, like, or I just want to open like a good artifact. I like having a good artifact in my pool.
I would hope to open blue red, but what I will say is my hope is that my removal spells line up with my best colors.
That makes sense. Yeah, that is so obnoxious.
Like, that is my actual hope.
That's mock and no black playables. Yeah.
I don't actually care if my bombs line up, because I as much as Tetsamok and Profane Procession are like insane in this format, my actual hope is like my interactive spells line up with my playables. Because this despite the fact that it has Ixalan attached to its name, ended up being like a normal sealed format.
Yeah, it feels good. Like, there are aggressive cards, which I think is a good thing for a sealed format to have. It makes it so...
I'm actually really glad that Goblin Trailblazer exists, to be honest.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, I think that if Blue-Red wasn't a deck in sealed, the sealed format would kind of be boring.
It would be pretty bad. You wouldn't have like an outlet.
You would only be able to play the 4-color decks, because the mid-range decks wouldn't have a spot in it. Like, if all of my decks are 4-color blue, then is black-green even good?
No, because you just play all of it.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter. Whereas the fact that blue-red and black-red, which I think is the second best aggro deck, even though I don't like it, both exist, put a challenge to those 4-color decks. Mm-hmm. Or 3-color decks, depending.
Yeah, I think it keeps in check, and you can get away with playing... So, like, people that play the mediocre late game deck can get away with it, because if they get paired against blue-red, then you can win. Because you're lower to the ground than your bomb warrant.
Yeah. Alright, so that is it. That's where we're at. That's our thoughts going into... I'm playing the weekend of GP Seattle. I assume you're playing the weekend after?
Yes, I'm going to Seattle, and then playing after online. Like the 5-8 one, or whatever it is.
It's 7 a.m.
I don't know if that's better or worse. I could have just stayed up till 5 a.m.
I don't know if it's better or worse for you either, bud. But I will say that I'm excited for this RPTQ. I'm glad that this is the sealed format that we get to play RPTQ
and not Ixalan.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that like I enjoy this format. Like, and I enjoyed most sealed formats, but this one's fun. Like,
it's good. It feels great compared to Ixalan, so that's also a plus.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are great, don't forget to share our sponsors at Play a Game Grid and at the Metabase. You can support us directly by going to patreon.com/ccmdg. You can find me at Spencer13H. You can find Danny at DJ Cathro. You can find Mason at Mason E. Clark. You can find the show at LTOMTG. You can email us at ltocast@gmail.com, I think is what it is. You can hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, twitch.tv/ccmtg. Something was wrong with Twitch this morning. We couldn't stream. So we'll just upload a video version of the podcast. And a shout out to Danny's microphone situation. I'm not sure what happened. But, you know, we appreciate you guys. It was a fun filled episode to get to talk about the preparation for the RPTQ and kind of where we sit in the sealed format. You can tweet at us with hashtag What's the Pick. Hashtag What's the Pick is our Twitter outreach program. If you tweet it, we will read it. I think I posted one.
If I remember.
Yeah. So I think the last one is just me, but I actually think this pack is actually impossible. So we have Divine Verdict, Cleansing Ray, Martyr of Dusk. I've not mentioned a card that I haven't that I haven't played yet. Negate, Sailor of Means. So obviously Negate, Cleansing Ray are out.
Mm-hmm.
Luminous Bonds.
Very good.
Legion Conquistador. Bombard.
Also very good.
Bombard. So, Dinosaur Hunter. Tillinolly's Ground. Swift Warden. What is it? Stormfleet Swashbuckler,
Mm-hmm.
Reckless Rage, and Radiant Destiny. This is probably the best pack I've ever seen.
It's good. It's good and pretty level. Like, this is the pack that you want to get opened across the table from you, right? Like,
this is the
you
pack
want to get this one 6-pick. Yeah, or your seal pool. Yeah, that's good.
So I think that there are some pretty clear above and beyond.
I mean, we can go by color, right? So, like, there's not a good enough blue card, there's not a good enough black card. So now we're on
Sailor
red.
Means does not compete with removal spells for you.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So,
so
alright. So now we're saying
Swift
it's
Warden.
between Reckless Rage, Bombard, Luminous Bonds, and Radiant Destiny. And Swift Warden is better than people think it is, but I don't know that
It's
I would
not.
start there. Is that where you're at?
I mean, so Swift Warden gets, like, the benefit, depending on how highly you place it, that it's the only green card.
Not placing that highly on pick one.
Yeah, I don't either. I think Reckless Rage is the highest upside. When it's good, it's the best.
I mean, Radiant Destiny is...
Also, yeah. I think I would choose between those two. I like them being high upside first picks.
I think my pick is between Radiant Destiny and Luminous Bonds.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I obviously like the red decks the best in this format, but Radiant Destiny's upside is insane, and Luminous Bonds I think is the best removal spell in the set.
Radiant Destiny only works in Vampires, though, right? Or does it?
I think you can play it in the Dino stack. I don't know.
Really?
Maybe it's only good in the Vampire stack. You're already convincing me to pick Luminous Bonds.
Yeah, that's ambitious to say that it's not just a Vampire stream.
That's probably true. I don't know. This pack was hard for me. I was like, I
think I would take Reckless Rage. I really enjoy playing with that card.
I do too. I think that it would depend on how I felt at the moment. Because I think this pack is insane. Like,
yeah. So my problem with taking Luminous Bonds, I think Legion Conquistador is close to as good as Luminous Bonds is.
oh, thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you guys all.
Have a good one.